isn't something we invented. It's observable, powerful. It has to mean something.
Christopher Nolan. He's a visionary filmmaker. I'm a big fan of his work. An incredible director that, for the longest time, I thought he had yet to disappoint me. Before any sort of controversy surrounding the Odyssey, the first thing I thought way back when I learned that Nolan was working on adapting the classic myth was why? Why is this guy remaking a story that was already told, you know? He kind of had just done that with Oppenheimer. I was looking forward to his next movie to be, well, original. Because I mean, Interstellar, in my opinion, is his best film. It's a flawed movie, but there's not a lot out there that can rival the absolute emotion it had. It's truly remarkable in that aspect. And I think one of Nolan's greatest strengths as a director is the emotion he conveys. Broadly speaking, I usually feel everything that his movies want me to feel. That point is driven to the extreme in the Odyssey. This was probably the most insane and overwhelming cinematic experience I've ever had in my life, and that's a good thing. Because this is an incredible adaptation and reinterpretation of a fantastic 3,000-year-old story that has endured to this day. And I know that the word reinterpretation may be kind of a trigger to some people, in the sense that there's a lot of people out there who would look at this film and think this is Nolan ruining the original myth, changing everything and trying to fix what isn't broken, and that isn't the case. Nolan didn't change the story in ways that dishonored the original. Everything that was left out was for the sake of making a stronger narrative in movie form that would resonate better with people today. It feels like Nolan having a conversation with Homer, not only adapting the story, but exploring aspects of it that weren't delved into in the original myth. And I think that's the best kind of an adaptation. If I wanted the exact same story again, I'd just reread the Homeric myth. Nolan built upon the already great story of Homer by asking questions that weren't in the original. How did the Trojan horse event affect Odysseus after the fact? What did that entire episode really mean, and how did it affect his life afterwards? Odysseus was always an amazing character, and this is praise directed mostly to the Homeric myth, but I have to praise Nolan for expanding upon it. Much like the story itself, it's not like Nolan was out here correcting the narrative and Odysseus' character. He just added to it and to him in really impactful ways. He explores how becoming a legendary figure impacted him. Odysseus was always a character motivated by going home to his family, and he's still that here. Nolan just also asks, what if he doesn't feel worthy of going back home because of his own actions? He doesn't simply retell the story, he asks what that story still has to say to us. The fact that people are still finding new things to say about Odysseus after nearly 3,000 years is probably the greatest compliment Homer's story could ever receive. The movie isn't replacing Homer, it's proving Homer is still worth talking about. The original myth didn't explore the guilt that Odysseus felt for being responsible for the Trojan horse. It wasn't a factor of the story. It was something Nolan wanted to explore himself, and it is by far the most powerful and compelling aspect of the movie that I'll be thinking about for a really long time. It draws an incredibly fascinating parallel between Zeus' law of hospitality and the act of the Trojan horse itself. Again, that was not in the original at all. The Odyssey was a story that explored this man's overwhelming desire to go back home to his family, thinking of their love, missing them greatly, and while this is of course still a massive part of the story in the movie, it's intertwined with other themes and ideas. The concept and culture around Zeus' law of hospitality is just so fascinating to me, which granted, that's more of a praise to the myth rather than the film. Like, Odysseus was accustomed to Zeus' law, the law that if a stranger arrives at your doorstep, you must welcome them as if they were family, feed them, care for them, help them. It's a huge theme in the original myth, and it's kind of a beautiful concept. It's remarkably kind, but almost to a really naive degree, because during his Odyssey, Odysseus expects that exact treatment from the people he comes across, and yet spends the entire story receiving the exact opposite of it everywhere he goes. And the most fascinating part of it is that after it all, everything loops back to Odysseus himself, because he was the one to break that law in the first place. He came up with the Trojan horse, something that was presented as a gift and peace offering to Troy, only to stab them in the back. He broke their trust, he broke Zeus' law, and in his mind at least, maybe forever. This idea is a direct parallel to the ending of Oppenheimer. He was also someone who thought his actions caused the world to change for the worse forever. And it was when I noticed that I realized why. Why did Nolan make a movie adaptation of the Odyssey? This is why. He truly wants to say something with this. It's all laid out to us in very specific terms in the end how Odysseus felt, and it retroactively makes the entire rest of the movie feel different. Like if you rewatch the movie knowing everything he feels and says in the end, so many things suddenly feel a lot stronger and meaningful. This is all to say that this is an incredibly thematically rich movie, and that's one of Nolan's strongest suits as a filmmaker. More specifically, he knows exactly how to shape an immense and larger the life journey around one character's emotions. Nolan is great at emotions. There is something deeply human about the stories he writes, about the characters he portrays. Between this, Interstellar, and Oppenheimer, there's some genuinely real connective tissue over themes of regret, determination, humanity, and above it all, love. And I love that. I love stories that focus on things that feel so deeply human, that feel like they're speaking to a part of us that is wired to feel for the other. That's why it's so incredibly fascinating to see this side of Odysseus' mind be explored in this film. It's truly touching. This is a movie that knows exactly how to make you feel exactly what they want you to feel. And that doesn't apply only to the emotional bits. Listen, like I said, this was one of the most intense and insane cinematic experience I've ever had in a movie theater. It was this expert mix of camera work, shot composition, framing, lighting, and sound design that just made you feel like you were there, like you could feel the awe, the despair, the horror and emotion that the characters are feeling at each and every moment. It's a insane movie, much like the myth itself is, really. Like, if you think some of the original passages were intense, then wait till you see the movie version. Circe is a witch that turns men into pigs. That's what the Pullman said originally. In the movie, you get to see that. She physically uses her hands to manually shape their human bodies into pigs, and it's just as grotesque and awful as you might think. Like, I'll admit that I'm a pretty squirmish guy, so I just sort of closed my eyes for a second there, which helped nothing, because the sound design was doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. The Cyclops section was horrifying and horrible to witness, and that initial shot of the Cyclops' giant silhouette entering the cave, then closing the entrance with a boulder, making everything turn dark around the man, so it's like you're trapped in this dark cave with a giant roaming around you that you can't see at all. It's brutal. It's just as horrific as you might imagine. Makes me come back to some of these changes Nolan made though. Like, in the original myth, there's this really famous and clever bit in the Cyclops section that was removed. Maybe you've heard of the nobody trick, but what happened was that originally Odysseus tries talking peacefully with the Cyclops, which goes nowhere. Later on, Odysseus offers him wine, which makes the Cyclops ask him his name, to which he says it's nobody. So even later, when the Cyclops is screaming in agony, other Cyclops appear outside to try to ask what's wrong. And he says, "Nobody is killing me," which makes the others leave thinking he wasn't actually in danger. This is not in the movie, which, well, I understand why, like, it would require there to be other Cyclops roaming around the islands, and it's, you know, more of a linguistic pun that maybe wouldn't work that well with Nolan's kind of meal making. But it's still a shame because it's a really clever little piece of storytelling that showed Odysseus' greatest strength, his intelligence. Odysseus was not known to be the strongest or mightiest soldier. His greatest and most unknown attribute is that he was clever. He used his wits to get out of hardship. And one of the most interesting parts of the myth is seeing his intelligence be challenged over and over, up until the point where he has to make impossible decisions. So while it's a shame that the nobody trick is absent, it's kind of made up for in a really interesting bit, which is when he deals with Circe. Because in the original, Hermes actually appears to give Odysseus advice against her, so it wasn't something that was purely attributed to Odysseus himself. Here, Hermes is cut, which sort of serves the narrative in showing the intelligence that Odysseus is known for. He's the one to use his wits to piece together what's going on and outsmart Circe. Another bit I want to mention is the sirens. In the original story, each stop in Odysseus' journey says something different about him that all adds to his character. Nolan builds upon this by having different sections connect to each other emotionally by Odysseus' own internal struggle. Homer originally described what Odysseus felt and did while listening to the siren song pretty well in his original poem. They were beautiful and alluring and sung of comfort, and we pretty much got to know what they sounded like by description alone. Here we just kinda don't, because when the soldiers put wax on their ears, we stop hearing with them. It's absolutely haunting. We silently get to see Odysseus' physical reactions to it while his men charge on. We see him screaming and shaking and begging when he can't hear any of it. We barely get to see the sirens themselves, which is also such an amazing touch. We only slightly get to make out their heavenly silhouettes in the distance while the movie's haunting soundtrack plays in the background. It starts as this muffled and surreal theme that kind of reminded of some of the tracks in Outer Wilds, and it suddenly switches to a kind of sound I've literally never heard before. I have never witnessed something like this in a movie my whole life. In the original, the sirens sing about allure, sexuality, and desire. It's different here. They sing about something much, much deeper. Something that connects deeply with the story and Odysseus himself as a character. Listen man, this movie just right away appealed to me because I love a good long-ass journey that takes you all over the place. Just a huge fucking adventure, a really meaningful journey that's really long and impactful, with a strong emotional and thematic core at the center of it all that drives the characters forward. It's why Interstellar is one of my favorite movies. And while Homer is really the one to be credited for having, created the story in the first place, I really believe Nolan's additions to the story made it stand out even more in movie form. Even though it's a 3-hour movie and they still had to make cuts to the original, rest in peace, SpongeBob went back, but it's like there's so many little things here and there in the myth that by modern standards would just maybe not be perceived super well, so I don't mind having those changes be made. For example, Zendaya is Athena, and okay, to be fair, let me talk about that first. This movie's casting is just too much, man. It's probably the movie with the most oversaturated A-list actor cast ever. It's so distracting. Zendaya is already everywhere. I have nothing against her or anything, but it's the most distracting thing ever to see her as Greek goddess Athena, like literally right after I saw the trailers for Spider-Man and Dune, in this very session right before watching this movie. It's such a culture shock that it actually kind of works against the film. And I don't mean just Zendaya herself. I mean, like, you will recognize literally every actor in this movie because they're everywhere all the time. That being said, though, pretty much everyone does a great job. It's not their fault. I have nothing against them, man. It's just a byproduct of Hollywood with a movie like this. So, like, yeah, back to my point, though. At first, I just saw Zendaya and I was like, oh my god, no, it's Zendaya again. But once it's revealed why Athena looks like her in this film, I actually thought it was kind of incredible. Athena doesn't really look like that. That's the form that she takes to mirror Odysseus' consciousness. And that's not in the original myth at all, much like Odysseus' whole internal turmoil regarding the war on Troy. There's a bit where Odysseus reunites with his dying dog that waited for him to come back home for 20 years, and he has this small moment of goodbye that brought me to tears, okay? I cried at a dying dog in a movie, sue me. But it's a moment that was different in Homer's original poem, because Odysseus wasn't originally able to say goodbye to his dog. He just sees him from afar and is unable to go to him because he can't break his disguise. He just suffers in silence. So I'm glad the movie was able to give them this moment. The dog was named Argos too, which was the name of my cousin's dog, which I never really knew why till now, so that hit close to home. He was a good dog. I miss him. This is all to say that the changes made to the story were mostly pretty good and served a movie adaptation of it very well. It doesn't feel like a direct, 100% faithful retelling of the Homeric myth. It feels like a reimagining of a classic tale that, instead of trying to fix it, only builds upon it by exploring aspects that weren't thought of before. And I really like that. I don't want to say that this is a masterpiece of a movie that is just flawless and absolutely incredible. Like, I just don't want to use those words, not only because the movie does have many flaws in the writing and pacing department, but I also just don't want to use terms like that for this. Like, you could definitely spend the whole day dissecting and picking this movie apart, especially considering how goddamn long it is, which works against the writing and pacing of the narrative a lot of the time. Or even with more simple stuff, like how fight scenes mostly kinda suck, because you can't tell what's happening most of the time because it's dark and it has one of the worst cases of shaky cam that I've ever seen. And we can talk for a while about historical inaccuracies, which don't personally bother me too much in a fictional story like this, but I still get the complaint, you know. I do believe movies like this should have some sort of warning beforehand, like, oh, this isn't historically accurate or something. You can talk about missed opportunities, about things that were good that probably shouldn't. Like, one incredibly disappointing missed potential is that in the original myth, Odysseus meets his mom in the underworld. She passed away while waiting for him to come back home, and it's generally one of the most emotionally impactful moments in the entire poem. That moment is not in the film at all, so huge missed potential. Or Calypso, she kinda just doesn't really do much in the film, while in the myth she was a pretty potent character at one point, being angry that the gods want Odysseus to leave. She just has more personality and more intensity. Again, there's a lot you can say here, but beyond all the criticism, the emotion is so there. I connect deeply with his strong thematic themes about humanity, love, kindness, and something deep within each and every one of us as people. Maybe that's why the Odyssey has survived for almost 3,000 years. Not because it has monsters and gods, but because underneath all that, it's about things that haven't changed. People still long for home, people still regret, people still love, people still cry when an old dog recognizes his best friend. It feels way more appropriate to call this film an impactful and meaningful experience. An intense, holy shit sort of epic that takes you on a long, rich journey. A Odyssey, if you will. Anyway, Mario wasn't in it, so 2 out of 10. Subscribe, please.